I would like to ask Dr. Katsumi Hirano for comments, and we will have 15 minutes here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Céline. It's an exciting presentation. I would like try to add to the supplementary information to facilitate this better understanding about this Abe administration's diplomacy, and especially toward this Africa. We can remember is political sequences just before the Abe coming out from the as a leadership of the Japan. Before the 2012, Japan experienced this very unstable situation and frequent leader successions. At that moment, among the international community, Japan degraded almost as nobody. And nobody take notice of the Japan saying. So the Abe, I suppose, that definitely need as a noticeable prank and the international committee again, and demonstrated Japan's presence, very wide range of the international community. So the FOIP is that. And gradually promulgated to the concept of FOIP. And it's not directly connected to the Africa, but China's BRI also is not directly connected to the Africa continent. It's a Silk Road concept. So the BRI and the FOIP is shared, is I mean the same hemisphere of the globe. In the respect of the Africa, I would like to raise these two events. One is 2004. Japanese government is held to the AATIC conference. AATIC means the Asian Africa Trade and Investment Conference. That conference is a part of the TICAD initiative, and it is the first international conference. It's prepared. It's a collaboration between the MOFA and the METI. And actually, this is the very first time, and including agent JICA and the JETRO. It's used to be the work in the very separately. So the AATIC under the Koizumi administration tried to get a meeting is Asian and African businessmen. That is one point. It's the sign of the shift of the TICAD focus. Another one is the next year, 2005. That is quite important. That year, we face a completed failure to the reform of the UN, especially UN Security Council. And that failure is mainly coming from Africa. And China influence already is very huge. And one country, just the name, this is Zimbabwe, is raise a hand as a motive to the rejection about this whole African expressing the opinion concerning the reform of the UN system. So that meaning is at that year, first mission of the TICAD is a diminish and also the vanish. So the TICAD is a scrap on the build, and the TICAD 4, the next TICAD under the Abe's first Abe's successor is Mr. Fukuda's Prime Minister Fukuda's initiative is a very business-oriented one. So, and afterward, the TICAD is a TICAD 5 to 7 is under the Abe administration, and very clear intention and trade, the investment promotion, and also there is a global, what can I say, collaborationship to share the same idea. That is a democracy. And that is, Céline said, is two pillars: is the economic side and the geopolitical side. Second thing is Prime Minister Abe's, ex-Prime Minister Abe's is a character. He is quite nationalistic dispensation, and may come from his grandfather, ex-Prime Minister Kishi. And Abe himself is frequently referred to his grandfather. And Mr. Kishi is some sort of the genius and very real politics, especially in the diplomacy. And he started in the year of 1957, maybe, as a prime minister, and with the portfolio as a foreign minister, and put on the very emphasis on the importance of diplomacy and strategic and real politics, just like as Henry Kissinger, and engagement oriented. Actually, the Kishi is the first voice as a Japan leaders is Asian and Africa, and he made a foundation of the Japan's Asian direction of diplomacy, continued aftermath under the LDP. And also he is the essential founder of the post-war Japan structure. One is for the high economic growth period, and also as a social security and the pension system. Such kind of things is made under the Kishi administration. And another point is an important thing as an inheritance to the Abe is Kishi is strengthened to the alliance with the US and the West in general. And its mean is a reject, is a neutralism. And the neutralism is very prevailed thought at that moment is the Japan intellectuals. But Kishi is a very anti-communist, and he is a very anti-opinion to the neutralism, international venue. It's a sort of the way of thinking, and put on the big emphasis of the diplomacy is inherited to his grandchildren is Shinzo Abe, in my observation. And the FOIP, from that point of view, is very understandable. And FOIP is, as a first appearance, even in the domestically, in the Japanese academics, it's seen very difficult to understand because very untraditional way of thinking. Because FOIP is a combine to the East Asian and Southeast Asia and South Asia. It is a very untraditional way of thinking, and a very huge area covered, and new sort of the alliance he proclaimed, including India. And Abe himself enjoyed a very close relationship with Prime Minister Modi, and that is one of the basement to the to promulgate these FOIP ideas. And that initiative is some sort of the similarity of his grandfather. And that is a basement. Abe, among our historical prime ministers after the war, is a very banner conscious. And that banner make the other country and the other head of a state to make easy understand to the Japan stance internationally. That's a very important thing, but it's sometimes not easy for the Japanese characteristics. But other is a sort of the type of the statement. And the next one is concerning the next TICAD VIII. You are quite right. TICAD under the Abe administration made a very clear commitment, but not necessarily is a commitment met as a result, and not welcoming outcomes. So the some sort of the refinement is required, I think. So let me say something from my thought is two things. One thing is economically and trade and investment side. Yes, and a TICAD, Prime Minister's office goal is not met reality, but not only for the Africa. The globally, Abe administration tried hard to promote the Japanese investment outside. Yes, the amount of investment increase let it be steady, but not satisfactory. Africa is one of the example, but also there is investment amount to the Middle East is not satisfactory, and Europe is also. So the in my thought, at first point should be included in the TICAD VIII composition. I think this Japan must revise its self-perception. Japan is a very aged society and not vital economy, just like its final stage of the British Empire. So the investment and the foreign direct investment is a quite important component to sustain to the Japanese economy in the future. Even in the currently, main resources of our international account is not trade account, it's coming from the income account. And currently, and actually the year over 2018 and 19, Japan is world's biggest FDI provider. Succeed as US and China. So the FDI is most important weapon, economic weapon for the Japanese economy currently. So it means if some the very good investment opportunity, Japanese businessmen must search such kind of opportunity. It's one of their mission, social mission. But traditional way of thinking, they think to just set up the plant and make and manage and try to sell. But such sort of the function, I think, is now mainly burdened is other Asian country. The Japan must step up the further phase. So the more colorful TICAD, I think, is better for the current Japanese economic structure. If the last TICAD VII, myself is in charge of the organized is a business event in the TICAD as Vice President in charge of the African Affairs in general. We invited from the 60 countries is a business person. Among the 60, 21 is a non-African country from Europe and Asia. So mainly is France and Turkey or the UK and Sesotho country is a main guest and the panelist on our conference. But other business person will be the most welcome to the next TICAD, if possible, because held in the Tunis. I think this more convenient come from the Europe and the Middle East. The sort of the colorfulness is I think, the future of the TICAD. It's never expected in the FOCAC in China. FOCAC is exclusively China and Africa conference. And another thing is geopolitical in your turn. My turn is the diplomacy. Yes, we try to maintain its peaceful relationship with our neighbor in China. And but sometimes China is sometimes very noisy surrounding our international environment. But Japan, we have this less than half size of the economy and the diminishing size of the population. So we definitely need is a collaboration very internationally, especially for the ASEAN country. So the TICAD might be the function to the bridge to connect to the Asian and then Africa. And FOIP is one of the base, is expectation from the ASEAN country. So the ASEAN leaders is very keen to come, Japan, to the playing a more big role internationally among these ASEAN and China. So that is one of the reasons to the FOIP came. So from that point of view, I think TICAD can function as a sort of the very international broad collaboration. That is an expression of our wish. We definitely hope to the more peaceful and more coexistence world, not only in Asia. And I completely agree with you. Japan's capability economically is already committed everything in the African continent. That is the limit of our capacity. So the next stage is a new player, highly expected. At the moment, the TICAD VII, my expectation on for example, is a soft fund, vision fund. That company is a quite new type of as a Japanese business standard, new way of thinking and the more energetic and the more animal spirit in the business mind. And they try to, I think they try to find is a good opportunity in the African continent. Another one is fast retailing. And I think this that company also have the intention and try to find this room to do the business in Africa. So the new type of the Japanese companies and the CEO are highly expected to join the next TICAD. Thank you very much. Ueda-san, お返ししますよ。
Hi, thank you very much, Dr. Katsumi Hirano, Dr. Hirano, for sharing the historical background and your very important suggestion to the upcoming TICAD. Now, I would like to ask Professor Izumi Ono for comment and for 10 minutes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much for your the opportunities. I really appreciate that Ms. Pajon's the wonderful, very crispy presentation, and followed by the Dr. Hirano's very deep analysis of the background and also future. Let me, my comments are very short. First of all, I very much appreciate the Ms. Pajon's candid assessment of the recent Japanese strategic and economic partnership with Africa. I think such external candid view is very much needed. And I think I really agree the most of her points. And this is a very much important observation. And I think we should really seriously think about for our planning the future TICAD. Particularly, she talked about that the Japanese government strategy in African development in terms of the both content and also rhetoric should be reconsidered because there are significant gaps from the realities. And also, she said that the Japan should revert to the more pragmatic approach to African development based on the realities. So I really agree on this line. And then my suggestions is that also we should go back to the basics and also in combination with a future-oriented new venture with Africa. This is my really suggestions. And I think there are many, the Dr. Hirano talked about the background for the FOIP. And also I understand in the first Abe administration, there was a freedom of art and prosperity, which was proposed by, at that time, foreign minister, Aso, currently finance minister. So I think these kind of them, it became FOIP. I think this very grand design is strategically very important. At the same time, I think business do not work unless the substantial improvement can be made on the ground to improve business environment, and also some really the facilitation each other. So I think we have to really go back to the basic, apart from the big strategic framework that I think we really needed. From that perspective, let me talk about maybe three main comments and also several questions to both Ms. Pajon and also Dr. Hirano. My first comment are the Japanese business model. Dr. Hirano said it is we are very old. I am very old, but also Japanese, also at the same time, we have to think about much more new, innovative model. I think that is true. At the same time, I think Japan has a maybe DNA, which is really deeply embedded on the detailed, maybe risk averse, but long-term thinking. And then, but once it is committed, you really work together with the partners on the long term. I think that is maybe Japanese companies, the DNA, and so as Japanese Development Corporation expert. And I think that is very important. And then for that to be really enhanced and then really make it true for the investment in Africa, I think Development Corporation, ODA, should be important building blocks for these basics. Of course, hard infrastructure is important, and also human resource development, like the Tibet, and also Kaizen, those are important, and also fostering human institutional network are very important. Some of them can be done by Japan only, but most of them, we have to work together with the various partners, particularly in the infrastructure development. Regarding this business model, Japan may have to improve more. At the same time, it is also important that maybe African partner would have a much more deeper understanding of how Japanese business model work. Maybe they may have to be much more patient, but maybe they wait for a long time. But sometimes when I was working I have been working for Ethiopia together with JICA for industrial policy dialogue. Sometimes I feel like maybe Japanese model is not clearly understood by them, including potential merits. They tend to agree with maybe quick investment with massive employment creation with the apparel sector for the southern. But if a Japanese company in SME, for example, have a very good sophisticated skill and they have an interest in investing, but in 20 persons for maybe job creation, they are very much reluctant. Or there are Japanese companies who wanted to really work with the Japanese area in the industrial park, but maybe size is small, so that they are not so serious about it. But I think more communication and dialogue of the merit and also what is a requirement to work together is needed. And for that time, I think a very close dialogue with a policy dialogue, and also accompanied with some kind of the communication or exchange with Japanese business people is very much needed. Second comment is I agree with Dr. Hirano's of the importance of maybe innovative approach. It be also that enhanced. In fact, when we think about that some of the successful cases, like a Cefao in Toyota Tsusho or Kansai Paint, who have been really working very innovative way in doing that social business, I think they work with foreign partners successfully. So that kind of, I think, working with foreign partners, particularly in the African context, is very important. So I think Japanese company, I think should be encouraged to working with jointly with various foreign partners, including Asian partners, as Dr. Hirano mentioned. Third point is that I think we should maybe revisit the successful experiences, what worked in Africa. I think there are several maybe good experiences we have accumulated. For example, this is not a business area, but for controlling or pandemic or controlling the expansion of pandemic. For example, there are several the ODA project in in Ghana, Noguchi Memorial Institute of Research, or Kenya, the KEMRI, the Research Institute for the Medicine. I think it's based on the decades of cooperation, and then counterpart institutions have been grown, become self-sufficient in training the other countries, and also they really work for the hub of PCR, the testing for the majority of the countries. So I think there are some examples which have worked based on long-lasting collaboration. I think those maybe experiences should be really honored. Second, I think recently we have seen that several the startup companies, particularly young Japanese entrepreneurs, are very much actively engaged in African development. JICA is also supporting. For example, in Uganda, I saw like Kotsu Kotsu, who really she worked with the agriculture, environmentally free agricultural development, and together with other innovative investors, that kind of company started to really working very much innovatively. Or there are many young the women's entrepreneurs in Ethiopia or the Uganda. Also, they are really doing excellent the work despite the hard the environment. Or some Japanese cooperation with the science and technologies startups, together with the business collaboration with SDG business in Mozambique, or maybe Tunisia, together with the university collaboration. I think they are trying to produce some of the tangible result, which is going to be developed in the business partnership. So I think those kind of experiences of a startup and also engaging young entrepreneurs and also business and universities, those are very much important. And I think those should be really based on the actual maybe progress should be further encouraged. Third point, another example is that I think that there have been other initiatives receiving that the African the private sector university people to the Japanese universities, and then I think this has proved certain, I think, that the impact in matching with the Japanese business people with the African the institution or the universities or business. I think this kind of human resource network is very much important, and I think some companies found it very useful in working with the graduate of Abe initiative. And also, for example, in Kobe City and Rwanda, they have university have been working very closely together. So I think those kind of maybe the good example which have been fostered over the past decade should be recognized and then further developed in the future. So those are the things. And then my third comment is that for the looking for the future, maybe in the post-pandemic situation, I think we have to think about maybe sustainable and also resilient recoveries. And then one of the very important issue is how to create that resilient the supply chain network regionally, locally, and also globally. And sustainability is also important. And I think for this, I think maybe Japanese Japan and JICA, that the Japanese company, JETRO, maybe together with European partners can work closely for that. So this will be maybe something which we should think about for the future in the news. So these are my comments about we have to go back to the basics at the same time with bringing some future, maybe futuristic orientation. And having said that, I would like to have some questions to the Pajon-san and also the Hirano-sensei. Regarding Pajon-san, I have two questions. First is about regarding European-Japan partnership. You mentioned that this will be one of the area where that we can work together. Could you give me more specific what kind of maybe entry point we could have, such as maybe quality infrastructure or digitalization or sustainability of supply chain, as I just mentioned? Do you have any thought about it? At the same time, European countries have a slightly different approach from United States vis-a-vis the China, because many European companies have already made a deep engagement in the Chinese business. So how does this maybe work in the partnership, in the context of partnership, EU, Europe and Japan? This is my first question. And second question is that I also would like to know about your observation of the future TICAD. As I said, that I think in order to make a building blocks for preparing for the business environment, I think development cooperation continue to be very important. And you talked about, and also the Hirano-sensei talked about much more in the business context. But how do you see in the role of development cooperation or ODA actors in the future TICAD setting? This is my second question. Regarding to that Hirano-sensei, I have two questions. First one is that Pajon-san said that maybe in the future, Japan should not just discuss with the China rivalry. China-Japan cooperation in the South country should be also thought about. At the same time, I realize it is a very much difficult, I think, geopolitical situation right now. China-US decoupling is going on, and also US, maybe current Biden administration is also very maybe tough, particularly in the human rights issues and many things. So how do you think about this China-Japan cooperation in South countries in the context of Africa? Do you see it is a viable option or not? Second, maybe in the this geopolitical the setting, we talk about a lot recently the Quad, U.S., Japan, Australia, India. There are increasing interest in maybe working with India. How this India factor can or may work in the Japanese business in African context? This is my second question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Ono, for your very insightful comments, and thank you very much for raising very important questions relating to post-COVID situation and others. Now we will move to the Q&A. Because of the time limitation, I would like to ask to Céline and Dr. Hirano to respond to Professor Ono's question. That will be the first round, and then when we have enough time, we will move to our second round of questions. Second round, okay? So Céline and Dr. Hirano, please take up some questions raised by Professor Ono. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Hirano, Dr. Ono, for the great comments and question. I appreciate very much. I will do my best to try to address Professor Ono's two questions. What about the partnership between the Europeans and Japan? I think it depends on where you're looking at. If you're looking at in terms of broad partnership, obviously the EU and Japan signed the SPA and EPA together. As part of the SPA, you have some categories of cooperation that can apply in third countries, especially in Africa. Japan and EU has also signed a kind of partnership for quality infrastructure and so on. So I think this would be a good entry point, actually, to try to encourage some concrete realization, a concrete effort, joint effort by the EU, by the European and Japan in third country, including in Africa. As I understand, there's no still not concrete implementation yet, but it's ongoing. Discussions are ongoing, and African countries are on the map. So we have to wait and see. You have specific issues that might be interesting. Of course, the infrastructure also related to energy, climate, and so on. Efforts regarding decarbonization of coal or electrification of Africa might be also some interesting sector to look at, and in which we could work together. Now, when you look at the national level, if I take the example of France and Japan, we are already working together in several key projects, such as in Abidjan. I believe we are working together to try to implement new infrastructure there. In case of private sector, we have also some very successful stories like Toyota Tsusho and CFAO, but it's still very tiny, and we must also recognize at some point that the companies are very much in competition. So that might be difficult to to find some synergy at some point. So we must try to, I believe, advance the cooperation in a certain fields and sectors and so on, but at the same time we must stay realistic about what we can do together, and not overplay or anything, because it's creating only misunderstanding, frustration, and so on. So we must stay quite realistic on this. And so I believe you asked me about the perception on China, what China is doing in Africa, and here I think that we are basically on the same page, and you can see the Europeans changed their perception and their image of China very much in the latest years, and especially last year with the pandemics. I think we've seen a number of grave evolutions that actually led the European capitals to make a very much more cautious assessment of what China is doing, both in Asia, in Europe, but also in Africa. So while China is very much interested and very much sometimes pushy to try to work with the Europeans, I think it will still be quite difficult to find some convergence and some way to work with them. So that would be my my short answers to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And so my time.
Yeah.
Okay. So the very limited time is very quickly. I try to respond. It's about China, and one important thing is infrastructure building. Almost mainly engaged by the Chinese national state-owned company. I think this almost all projects is going stopped, and all finance now coming as a bad debt. So the Chinese government is very busy to handling such bad debt problem. Just like the 1980s is all traditional donor handling of that. At that moment, 70% is debt canceling is a Japanese one. That's kind of the task China must done first. So I think they are not going, enough wise is resumes a sort of the stupid business. So in that field, there is no possibility to the collaboration between Japan and China. And another thing is China is now trying to purge is Mr. Jack Ma. And Jack Ma is, I think, is the best popular Chinese and African businessman. So that kind of the personality is the most important. A good example is U.S. U.S. government also faces a difficulty, same difficulty like us. They try to initiate a lot of the scheme, but there's no result, no outcome coming. But on the other hand, it's a GAFA. It's a very, very popular platform enjoyed by the African consumer. But so the China has to potentially have some sort of the business, very active business, but the government is not happy to contain such sort of element. That is a fundamental defeat of the Chinese diplomacy. And their diplomacy is to concentrate all the state. So the all negotiation is the interstate. But in Africa, state is not leader and not driver as a business development. It is almost done by the business sector. So the state of the governmental apparatus is always, not always, almost is a deterrent, the business promotion. So now, and almost all African government is a big debt, and just inevitably to the handling is the COVID-19. So the more business-like environment will come, I think. So from that point of view, the nationality is not so important. So the more open field must be prepared to the international, very colorful collaboration. From that point of view, India is a good candidate, I think, because it's not exclusively for the African business. For the Japanese business, it's very delayed of the digitization and the lack of the business staff. And our education system is not yield a big amount of the digital expert. So globally speaking, how many Indians are you employed is a very good standard to measure to the digitization. So the Japan business cycle definitely need to the more Indian staff. So from that point of view, Africa definitely the one of the target. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Hirano and Céline, for your response. In fact, we are running out of time, but I would like to ask one question to Dr. Hirano by participant. Dr. Hirano, would you think that new type of Japanese companies are sensitive to local understanding and contributing to African development? Could you show some concrete examples of new way of Asian-Japan cooperation on African investment? Thank you.
I think we should learn more from our neighbor because there's, for example, Singapore, Malaysia, produce a more amount of investment than Japan. So already doing the business in the African continent. So we can learn to how to handle the risk because the Japanese company, generally speaking, is too much risk about it, but it's a business itself is defined to how to handle the risk. So if don't like a risk, that person can quit as a businessman. Please join the government side. They are not qualified as a business. So the Japanese private sector must establish themselves as a business, as a global business. So from that point of view, Africa is a good field. So the much learning will be waiting for you. And Turkey or the Egyptian doing the very good trials. And startups, Professor Ono mentioned, is almost half of the finance is going to the startup in Africa run by the Americans. It's not always is managed by the African businessman. So every part of the world coming to the new generation, including the Japanese, try to establish the new business as a startups. And also venture capital is coming together from every part of the world, including the Japanese venture capitalists. So that's the new frontier we must recognize. And that is Africa. And that is the future of Africa, in my observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hirano, for your comment. We are now moving to the conclusion, and I would like to ask His Excellency, Mr. Elumi, Ambassador of the Republic of Tunisia to Japan, to give us the concluding remarks. Mr. Ambassador Elumi, please turn your camera and micro on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Wesu, for this opportunity. I would like to thank GRIPS for organizing today's webinar on a very important topic. I would like also to thank all the speakers, Mrs. Pajon, Dr. Hirano, that I know very well, a good friend, especially when he used to be Vice President JETRO, and also Professor Ono. I'd like to thank all of them for their comprehensive and insightful presentations. I personally learned a lot from their comments. Actually, I'm taking the floor since Tunisia, as you know, will be hosting the upcoming TICAD VIII in 2022. And as all the participants know, in July last year, 2020, the Tunisian and Japanese government announced officially and simultaneously the holding of the TICAD VIII summit in Tunisia in 2022. Giving then the kickoff of the preparatory process. In this regard, there were 3 senior official co-organizers meetings held. First in August 2020, second in November 25, 2020, and the last one was had on March 10, 2021. In my concluding remarks, I would like to underline 2 points. The first one is that the readiness of Tunisia to host the upcoming TICAD, Tunisia will ensure all the conditions for its success. Thanks to its experience in organizing such major international and regional events, and its capacity to provide all the requested facilities for participating delegations and organizing the side events. As you might recall, Tunisia, for example, hosted in December 2010 the second Japan Arab Economic Forum, very successfully. The second point that I would like to underline that during the preparatory process, there was an agreement to tackle many of the issues raised by the speakers during their comments. First, as a matter of fact, is the issue of coping with the COVID-19 crisis. Professor Ono mentioned the resilient health, which is a major topic. Second is engaging youth and the gender issue. As you know, the role of African youth on managing the health crisis through creative initiatives, digital and technological skills, and startups. And here I would underline the word startups. Third, continue working to eliminate all forms of discriminations against African women to be a force for change and development. Fourth, digital transformation in Africa. Last but not least is the strong participation of the private sector in economic events during the TICAD VIII. And I hope that, as mentioned by some of the speakers, I hope that Tunisia strategic location will help to have many participants, both from public, private sector, and also civil society and researchers, in order to take advantage of this platform that constitute the TICAD process and engage in this process of thinking in order to build the Japanese-African partnership and continue to discuss what we can do together in terms of development and tackling the challenging issues that Africa, Japan, but all over the world we are facing. Thank you very much again for giving me this wonderful opportunity, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, for your participation and your very kind remarks. And Tunisia is known for a very high rate of female participation to the economy and to the move to digital solution that Japan can learn a lot from your country. And so before closing, we would like to thank again Céline, Dr. Hirano, and Professor Ono for your kind presentation and comments. And thank you very much, dear participants, for joining us today. We Great Development Forum, we organize a series of webinars on African and Asian development in the coming years. So see you again, and I hope you stay safe. Thank you very much.